live, and we are live.
What is that even from?
From Iambelina. When I used to listen to, I watched a lot of Iambelina's videos. There's a character on YouTube that I used to follow in my early days of cryptocurrency. I was learning about cryptocurrency from him early 2017.
Yeah, I remember.
Or late 2017, 18.
Does he do anything now? Is he posting or like?
Yeah, he went deep into crypto. I think he created a company called Token Metrics that is like an aggregator of it's a software as a service. It's pretty good. He started off as an IBM employee. That's where he made a little bit of money, and then eventually went into cryptocurrency after multiple different side hustles.
He became like the poster boy for cryptocurrency.
One of them, at least.
Yeah, or one of them. Yeah.
In 2018, he was one of the big names there, but things have changed.
He did a music video and he like went all out.
He was on a world tour.
Yeah. So I guess he's not. Is he still living that large? So
Well, he's still doing it, and I think it's made him some money. I think he's made some money because he approached it in a good way. He knew what he was doing. He traveled. He met people. He was networking. He was able to get involved.
He documented everything.
Documented everything on video.
He was showing off everything.
He was ahead of the curve.
Yeah. He definitely made money off of those videos.
He was involved with a lot of projects at the very early stage. I remember him being part of KuCoin, and KuCoin is one of the big exchanges. So, whenever you're, I can't knock his hustle. That's what it comes down to. I respect it.
That's cool. So he's the one that said, "We're live.
Whenever he's streaming videos, it was just funny how he says, "And we are live, and we are live, and we are live." It's funny. I always thought it was funny.
Okay, I've always wondered where you got that from.
And we are live. He says it with this Ugandan accent.
Okay.
Which is his country of origin.
Right. That's cool. So, like a couple days ago, one of my students emailed me and was like, "Can you do like a video or do a discussion on Proposition 16 because they think it has a lot to do with what they're learning and what's going on and what's really going to affect them." And I think it is. If you also come from a perspective of like, well, actually let's get into like what
is Prop 16
actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so Proposition 16 it's going to be on the California ballot, so it's not a federal thing or anything like that, but so it's strictly for California, and what it's going to do, if you say yes on Proposition 16, it's going to lift the ban on affirmative action. So in 1996, California California voted into place Proposition 206.
Yeah.
And that proposition made it, affirmative action in a public institution or public organization, public contracts, all that kind of stuff. It made affirmative action illegal.
Okay.
So you're not allowed to give any kind of preferential treatment based on, ethnic group and things like that. Protected classes don't get any sort of preferential treatment in the public sector. So government jobs, government contracts, public schools as well. So like the UC system, the Cal State system, and even public elementary schools, high schools, and all of that. You're not allowed to give, any kind of preferential treatment. So it's been like that since 1996. Now, Proposition 16 is saying, should we lift that ban? Should we get rid of 206 and allow affirmative action again? So there are two arguments, and both arguments that are for or against this is really arguing, claims to be on the side of like, let's not allow discrimination. We want want to get rid of discrimination in this state. But both sides come from a totally different perspective of how you can discriminate against people.
How people are getting discriminated against when it comes to school admissions.
Like school admissions and also government contracts. Because if you think about it, like small businesses, usually they can really take off if they can get a government contract, if they can sell to the government.
One of the ways.
Yeah, one of the ways. But government contracts are usually given to, for the most part, large companies. Mostly large companies are owned by white males, right?
Okay.
So people of color and even women are left out. They're not getting these government contracts, and they stay small businesses forever.
Isn't the statistics like I read somewhere that the statistics is somewhere around less than 3% of government contracts go to minority groups?
Yeah,
is that right?
Something like that. Yeah, it's a
so
very,
affirmative
very
action was a law that was put in place in the 90s to mitigate that, to make it fair.
Well, before 1996, they allowed affirmative action. So they just tried to give more opportunities to minorities, to protected classes, to allow them to have contracts or even give them preferential treatment like in universities. Because like, for example, if like when kids are applying to universities, to schools, like the UC system, like Cal State system or whatever, the kids who, if you're just doing it purely based on merit and like test scores and your grades and whatnot, or even like the extracurricular activities that the student was involved in when they're in high school, if it's purely based on that, who do you think is really going to fill up the university? Which class or which group do you think is going to get all the acceptance letters at these universities? Of course, the kids who've had more advantages from birth. Okay, the kids who were fostered in an environment where maybe they have both parents at home, they probably live a middle class or upper middle class lifestyle, they've had tutors if they needed it,
so you're saying it favors mostly people who were already doing well to begin with and are informed?
Affirmative action would allow kind of even the playing field a little bit. So affirmative action would say it's not just based on merit. We're also going to look at kids who are raised in like the inner city areas and look at their grades may not be as good as the other kids' grades, but maybe you can take the best of that group. Okay, so maybe don't measure them on the same scale as you're measuring or as you're evaluating the kids who come from other types of families that generally do really well. Let's open the doors up for the other kids, the more disadvantaged children as well, and give them more opportunity and evaluate them on a different scale. Is what affirmative action would do. So if you said yes on Prop 16, it would kind of open things up and go, let's look at all the other groups who may be from a disadvantaged group. Let's look at the protected classes and let's evaluate them on a different scale so that they have more chances to also be part of the university, to also maybe be given other opportunities to succeed, given other jobs, and even contracts, government contracts, like for their businesses and whatnot. But then the other side who argues against Proposition 16 is saying that no, if you do that, that means you're discriminating against everyone. Because if you start giving preferential treatment to all these other different classes, protected classes, then that's going to create a lot of resentment. That's going to create tension between different groups, and people are going to be like, well, you're only giving them that guy over there admission to that university because he is a black person or something, and
recently
and I had to work extra hard because I'm white and I had to compete with all the other white people who do really well, and that guy over there who's black didn't have to have the grades that I had to have to get this admission.
I get it. Recently, there was there was news that came out of Harvard. I believe it was probably like 4 or 5 years ago, where some guy filed a lawsuit for his daughter, who is a student at Harvard, that he thought that his daughter wasn't given a fair chance. His daughter, who's white, wasn't given a fair chance, considering that there's a lot of Asian students that were given admission to Harvard off of affirmative action. So he was fighting. He filed a lawsuit against that law. So does Prop 16 seek to eliminate?
It seeks to eliminate the ban on affirmative action.
Okay.
So if you say yes to Proposition 16, you're saying yes to affirmative action and yes to, let's kind of even out the opportunities for all the different groups. Okay. And if you say no on Proposition 16, that means you're saying let's keep the ban on affirmative action and let's do not allow all the public organizations to give any preferential treatment to anyone. It's purely based on who's the best.
Just based on merit.
Based on merit only.
Now, the question is do we still need affirmative action? Because I would argue that the playing field has not been equal for a long time, but the internet is evening out that playing field. I mean, especially during this pandemic period, when the pandemic that has forced a lot of these institutions and employers to go online. So you find that the barrier of entry to some of these top name schools is no longer as it used to be. You can get this information or education on YouTube. You get it from MOOCs, online courses, platforms like Udemy and Coursera and the likes. So the question is it really necessary to have affirmative action?
Well, another argument that people make is it's really not necessary to have affirmative action at all anyway, because a lot of people would say, well, today we have plenty of people who are part of protected classes who have moved their way up already. I mean, you can't say that there aren't plenty of like rich or wealthy black and brown people in this state.
Yeah. And
you can't say that there are also poor white people as well, and those poor white people are not going to have the same advantages as like the wealthy black people.
Right. I understand the argument.
So there's that as well.
Yeah. If you're poor and white, why do you get affirmative action and I don't? I'm poor. I can understand our argument. So yes, I guess it comes down to your convictions. Do you really believe that this country still needs affirmative action? Then vote yes.
Or the state does need it. Also, another thing. Okay, so in the state of California, even though affirmative action isn't allowed, you're not allowed to give preferential treatment to people who are part of certain protected classes, so certain ethnic groups and whatnot. But you are allowed to help out, like in the university system, you are allowed to give a little bit of preferential treatment to students who are poor, low income, and also to students who might be the first in their family to go to college. So you are kind of opening things up to students who have otherwise probably would not have an opportunity to go for higher education. So in a way, okay, yeah, there are programs that sort of help those students, but we have, since the 90s, we have actually not given, affirmative action has actually not been allowed. So do we need it back? Do we need to allow affirmative action to come back, or do we not?
I really, I understand affirmative action. As an immigrant, I earned everything I got. I wasn't given any professional treatment. I worked and paid for school. I worked full time and paid for nursing school. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities that you don't necessarily, no minority or no people that are not a lot of people. Okay, let me rephrase it. I think that I think we should have both because there's clear unfairness in this system.
Right. There is.
So there are people who need affirmative action. There are people who need to be given a chance. But there's also opportunities for those who don't need affirmative action. If you need something, just go get it. If you want to apply for a school, go apply. You're gonna, you know, and if Stanford doesn't want you, go somewhere else. If you go to Harvard, if Harvard doesn't want you, go to your local state college because, you know, okay, we're talking about Prop 16, so I'm gonna stick with California. If Stanford doesn't want you, then go to Cal State. I don't think that you need any. You don't need Stanford on your degree. You don't necessarily have to have a Stanford degree to succeed.
But if you've been working your entire life in high school to get that Ivy League school, and you find out, how would you even know anyway that you didn't get accepted because the university decided
to discriminate
against you and go with, you know, like a Hispanic kid instead, just because of that? How do you even know that?
You can't litigate racism unless it's blatant. It's hard to tell. You can't read people's minds. I've never waited for someone to hand me anything. I go get what I want.
Right.
So it's a different mindset. Some people would like to sit and wait for opportunities to come to them, and some are go-getters and they go get it. For both classes of people, they need all the resources they can get. We need affirmative action. If you want it, you can use it, and if you don't want it, then you go get what's yours. So that's my opinion.
I do feel like private institutions, I think, can do whatever they're gonna do as long as they're not like overtly being discriminatory or something. Because private institutions, they have a business to run. I think that's really the only thing that they usually care about anyway. But public institutions, I do kind of feel like they need to make sure that things are equal.
They have a responsibility.
They have a responsibility to take care of their citizens. And if it does seem like we're having, like in the state of California, I don't know the statistics, so I don't know exactly. Do we have more people in protected classes who do not have opportunities? Because if that is the case, then I think that affirmative action should be introduced back into our system, and public institutions should be using that, because we do need to kind of make sure that there is equal opportunity across the board.
And we know that equality does not exist in the system. There's statistics to back the fact that there is racism and there's systemic racism, whether it's in the education space or employment space or government contracts, business space, lending, whatever you may have it.
Right.
These are not made up. A lot of minority groups have. It's very clear. The numbers don't lie. So, and this is why I take the point that I'm for the point that you should have affirmative action in public, at least in public institutions. Now, the private institutions, they can do whatever they want. It's their business. They run their institution however they want.
You want to be evil, you want to be good, whatever.
Well, within the law.
Within the law,
you can't be taking advantage of people.
I think you can take advantage of people within the law, because people do that, basically all the time. But, I do feel like private institutions don't really care too much about anything else except for making their money.
Right.
So, I wouldn't even worry too much.
Most kids need to go to the local colleges anyway. I don't know, all these brand name institutions are just that brand name. It's like buying a Gucci purse or buying a regular purse at TJ Maxx or Ross. They're both purses, so just,
get your education.
The job itself, especially in recent times, you get a job based on your skills and your ability to demonstrate capacity to do the work, not the piece of paper that says that you can do the work. How many times do you hire people with fancy degrees and they can't perform? We see that a lot. And some of these newer companies like Facebook, Google, Amazon, some of these big newer institutions, LinkedIn, they're not. I know I've seen Tesla. Elon Musk has posted on Twitter one time, we're looking for a certain engineer. Your degree doesn't matter. You just need to be able to demonstrate that you know what they are fully aware that we have a problem of four-year colleges and tertiary institutions becoming too loaded, like too much money going to the administration and to spruce up the environment and build all these fancy things to attract people, and they put a lot of money in their athletic departments, but they're not actually devoted into seeing kids succeed post university. I personally think that a lot of these universities have to be required to make sure that you get a job after you get that degree. I mean, it's an investment. If I made a $50,000 investment in a business, I want a result. You know, I want a result in it. And if you succeed and get a degree from an institution, especially if they push you towards getting a degree in a field like a sociology degree or like a biology, some of these degrees that don't immediately lead to a job or a lucrative job, is they need to be held accountable for that, because you're leaving with loans. A lot of times you have to take out hefty loans to go to these colleges. So if you're going to take out a hefty loan, that's an investment on your future, and it's only fair that they're responsible for making sure that you get a job to service that loan. That's my take on it. So affirmative action or not, the real argument or real conversation is
are you giving actual opportunity for them to succeed?
Are you preparing these kids to actually be successful in life when they get out of school? That's the real discussion. You know, you got people here with hundreds of thousands of or tens of thousands of college loan, and they can't even find a job. They're working as cashiers at Walmart with $40,000, $50,000 in debt. Yeah. That's gotta stop. That's where the conversation really needs to go. You know?
Right.
Affirmative action seems like some silly debate that they have every campaign circle. I've been hearing that word, affirmative action, since I came to this country, and it just doesn't. It seems like one of those hot button issues that they just bring up to rouse people up, like abortion and immigration.
Yeah, I would say
it's just an empty debate. You know. So
what are you gonna do? Are you gonna vote yes or no on Prop 16 now that we know about it? I hate voting.
I don't care about that topic. I'm just gonna vote yes, because it needs to exist. As long as inequality exists in this country, then they need to do something about it. Yeah. It remains important. Now, if it was equal, and over the years we've taken survey, and survey has demonstrated that we've put a dent in inequality, and people are living a more fair and equitable life. You can make the argument to do away with affirmative action, but until that time, it needs to exist, because it's no coincidence that the bottom half are becoming poorer and poorer, and the majority of people are the beneficiaries of this American dream. It's not fair. It needs to be an equitable playing field. Listen, talent and smart and knowledge is not limited to a certain class of people.
Right.
It's evenly distributed. Talent and ability and knowledge is equal. What's not equal is opportunities.
Yeah.
And we have a responsibility to change that. So I vote yes on Prop 16.
I vote yes